Hi there, it's Pete from Hermitage Road. Welcome back to the layout. As I've said before, I run my layout, sometimes steam, sometimes diesel. Tonight you can see it's steam. So I'm going to give you a view of the layout and what I've done to make it suitable for steam. I've got the original steam shed here with two manors outside. And I've taken the main diesel depot out from along here. And it's just holding sidings now with a small shed and a crane outside it. Right, back to the outside. What I was going to talk about tonight is the manors. Now these were developed in 1938 by the GWR, designed by Charles Collett, mainly because the traffic department in the GWR had identified a need for a lower loading locomotive, a 460. They had the Granges and the Halls, but they were red graded and they wanted something for the blue graded lines. So what they did was designed a new boiler, a number 14 boiler for the manor class, and used parts from the other locomotive that you can see in the background, which was the 4300 class. They didn't use too much of it. Obviously the tenders were used and some of the running gear. And when they first introduced them, they introduced 20 of these. And I believe there was originally the plan was to introduce 80, but it never actually happened because the war intervened and then the railways got nationalised. But when they first developed them, there were severe problems with them. They underperformed. They weren't very good. The steaming was poor and the power was actually poor. Now, this wasn't really solved until after the war in the 1950s. What they did in the 1950s was take one back to Swindon and have a look at the boiler. I believe they put a smaller blast pipe in the smoke box, and this changed the drafting on the locomotive. It pulled more air through, and they also altered some of the fire bars, which apparently allowed more draw through the boiler. And this transformed them as a locomotive. It turned them into a very powerful locomotive. In fact, they were graded the same as the Hall and the Grange, which is quite amazing, seeing they were quite a bit smaller. Now, they were used initially in the Cambrian lines, which were quite lightly laid, and also for double heading expresses over the Devon banks, and they were based at Lera and a few in Cornwall, and they were very well liked locomotives. The other place they used them was on the Didcot, Newbury and Southampton Railway, which is another cross-country line that wasn't very heavy particularly. It wasn't very well laid, so they needed a locomotive that was a bit lighter wheel loading. Now the Manor is probably my favourite steam engine. I don't quite know why. It's like a very small Castle or King, although obviously they were 4-cylinder locomotives, but it had the looks of them, and in some ways it was a better balanced shape with the slightly smaller tender. And they made a fantastic sound. I don't know whether any of you have heard them on Gloucestershire, Warwickshire or the Severn Valley Railways. They got a real bark to them. They're very loud, especially when working uphill, and they give the impression of a really powerful locomotive. Now the two you can see in front of me are both Dapol version. Dapol was the first one to the market before Accurascale, and they did a pretty good job on it. They've got the very brassy coloured safety bonnet on there. I don't know whether that's too polished. I know when locomotives were used for things like the Cambrian Coast Express, they were buffed up and looked fantastic, but for normal use they tended to dull down a bit. Now that's one of the Dapol 4300s, which is they were developed from, or used parts from, on a coal train. And what we've got down here is the Accurascale ones. Now the Accurascale is a very impressive model, and they've got the smoke box right. The smoke boxes on steam engines tended to be matte. Even if they weren't matte when they started, they ended up like that. And I think that gives a better impression. Now, I wouldn't like to say too much about how good each one is. All I can say is I can only go by the running I've got on them, really. The actual detail is pretty much the same. I don't see a lot of differences, but the Accurascale one, even though it's got a 3-pole motor, as against the 5-pole in the Dapol one, it seems to run better. It's almost silent, and the running on it is absolutely fantastic. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any of these sound fitted. I haven't got to it yet. I've been concentrating on the diesels for a while. Now, I'm going to run a couple of the locomotives around the layout. Now, you can see the Coltrane. This is the 4300, and I'm running the other manor on a normal trainer Mark 1s. Manors didn't tended to be used much for freight, as far as I've been able to find out. Maybe somebody knows different to this, but I don't see many pictures of them on any sort of freight train. They were predominantly a passenger locomotive, and this one's just going to come into view in a minute. And I don't know why. I don't think they were suitable particularly for freight, even though the Granges and the Halls certainly were, and they were very good locomotives. We did have a couple of them allocated to Bristol, I found out recently. I don't remember actually seeing any. I'm not quite old enough for that. Not in Bristol, but I've obviously seen them on the various preserved railways, because they are a very popular locomotive and well liked. The manor, actually, sorry, just not the camera there. The manor I'm using around there, I believe, is Compton Manor, and it's one of the Dapol ones, and you know, the running is pretty good on it. Now, I think I'm going to about wrap this up, but if you could like, subscribe, share and comment, and I don't know what you think about the layout in its steam mode. I like to give myself a wide variation of running things, both steam and diesels. The diesels tend to be the 1980s, as that's the favourite period that I liked, but I spent too much time down on Templemead Station watching them, and took the kids along with me, and they never inherited my love of railways. I'm going to have to get rid of them, I think. But, so good night, and thank you for watching. Bye.